This is East Asia Tonight.
Good Friday evening. I'm Otelli Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's future hangs in a balance after the leader of his ruling party, the PPP, calls for the swift suspension of his presidential powers. And more legal fallout from the failed martial law attempt. Military prosecutors are asking 10 officers to be barred from leaving the country after 3 senior commanders were suspended. Still fury on the streets. South Korean police says it expects tens of thousands of people to attend protests against President Yoon Suk-yeol on Saturday. And the country's central bank governor sees the political crisis as having limited impact on the economy compared to the international tariffs planned by incoming U.S. President Donald Trump. Still ahead on East Asia Tonight, take a deep dive into internet buzzwords that have topped an annual list in China. We explore with our correspondents the meanings behind the phrases and why they are seen as a window into Chinese society. Well, tonight we start again in South Korea, where the head of Yoon Suk-yeol's own party, the ruling People Power Party, has demanded the suspension of the president's powers for what he calls the country's safety. Now, there is a parliamentary vote scheduled for tomorrow on whether to impeach Mr. Yoon over the martial law declaration. Lawmakers from the PPP have been holding a meeting at the National Assembly to discuss the motion.
그리고 이번 불법 계엄이 잘못이라고 인정하지도 않고 있습니다. 그렇기 때문에 윤석열 대통령이 대한민국의 대통령직을 계속 수행할 경우에는 이번 비상계엄과 같은 극단적인 행동이 재현될 우려가 크고 그로 인해서 대한민국과 대한민국의 국민들을 큰 위험에 빠뜨릴 우려가 크다고 생각합니다.
Leader Han Dong-hoon claims there is evidence that President Yoon had ordered the arrests of key politicians on grounds of them being anti-state forces. The presidential office and spy agency chief have denied those accusations, saying the leader did not make such an order. But the PPP had stopped short of urging members to support the impeachment motion, which is due for a vote tomorrow. The bill, led by the opposition, will need 8 ruling party lawmakers to cross the floor in order to secure a majority. Well, latest Gallup numbers indicate that President Yoon's popularity has plunged to a new low of 13%. And for more on this, we are joined by CNA's Lim Yoon-suk live from the National Assembly in Seoul. Yoon-suk, we can see quite a pretty huge crowd behind you. Tell us more about the situation. Give us an update. What is it like at the National Assembly?
I am standing here outside the National Assembly. Now, this is one of the main roads leading to the National Assembly, but South Koreans have gathered here tonight, and they're all holding this candlelight, and it seems like, there's a candlelight visual that is happening here just outside the National Assembly. Now, many of these people here are holding placards and cards saying that President Yoon Suk-yeol should be impeached and that he should step down from the office right away. Now, if you look around me here, and I'll step aside so you can get a sense of what it's like here, there are people who have just finished work. I was talking to one person, and the person said that she felt that she just had to come out here and give her support because she doesn't think that President Yoon Suk-yeol is suitable, is the right person to be leading South Korea now. And other people that I've spoken to have said similar things to me, saying that from what they know so far and what they've heard from the local media, but also from those people, including the Vice Defense Minister Kim Sun-ho and the Army Chief of Staff, as to how South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol had given orders for the troops to enter the National Assembly, to overtake the National Assembly, and to arrest several of the key politicians. And that's why the ruling party head Han Dong-hoon said that he didn't think that President Yoon Suk-yeol should remain in office, and thinks that for the safety of these people that he should step down. Now, these are just some of the people that I'm showing you here, but the line, the road here leading way over that side to Yeouido, which is the financial district here in South Korea, is really very long, and it really is difficult to tell you how many people have arrived here. But remember in the 2016, 2017, when then President Park Geun-hye was being impeached, we had people in the hundreds of thousands, and there were as many as 1 people out in the street. And right now, be 1 million, but many people here are saying that more and more people will be coming out to the streets here in South Korea, not just here in Seoul, but also throughout the country, to make sure that their leader, Yoon Suk-yeol, steps down or be impeached tomorrow.
Yeah, not to mention that they're spending their Friday night in really chilly conditions. So Yoon Suk, the ruling People Power Party, they've been holding a meeting at the National Assembly. What do we know of that meeting and the sort of possible outcomes that could come out of it?
Well, yes, they've been meeting inside the National Assembly for hours. And in fact, I was inside the National Assembly earlier trying to sort of get a sense of what's happening and hoping that the meeting would end before I come out here to do this and to tell you the results of that meeting. But it seems like the meeting has not yet ended. I did see some of the ruling party members walking out of that meeting, but they refused to make any comments. Now, although the ruling party head, Han Dong-un, did say that he wanted to see President Yoon Suk-yeol leave the office, he fell short of saying that the President Yoon should be impeached. And so I think that is the question right now, whether the ruling party is going to give their votes to the main opposition parties and the opposition parties in that impeachment bill on that vote tomorrow. I did speak to one lawmaker from the main opposition Democratic Party, and this is what he told me, because earlier the lawmakers from the main Democratic Party had blocked the entrance to the National Assembly because they were worried that President Yoon Suk-yeol might come to the National Assembly, offer an apology, and also say that he would resign. But there were a handful of lawmakers from the main opposition Democratic Party and also smaller opposition parties who blocked the entrance. And let me share with you what one lawmaker from the opposition camp told me.
막은 이유는 우선 얼마 전에 왔었어야 할 그 예산안 설명, 시정연설이라고 하는데요. 그 예산안 설명에도 사실은 국회를 불신하는 발언을 하면서 오지를 않았습니다. 그런데 지금 불과 며칠 전에 군대를 동원해서 국회를 장악하고 이제 그 기능을 정지시키려고 했던 그 사람이 온다는 것 자체가 기본적으로 말이 안 되는 이야기이고.
Now, the National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-shik also did say that he had advised President Yoon not to come to the National Assembly because he wasn't sure what was going to happen inside, and he wasn't sure if he would be safe to go into the National Assemblies. And so in the end, we didn't see President Yoon in there, but the opposition lawmakers were blocking and said even if he wanted to come, he wouldn't be allowed inside the National Assembly.
Now, Yoon Suk, just to look ahead a little bit, National Assembly is set to vote on the impeachment motion for President Yoon. What happens when that's passed, and what happens if it fails to go through?
Well, as of now, the impeachment bill is expected to be voted by the lawmakers at 7 p.m. Saturday, Korean time. Now, there were some reports earlier that time might be brought forward because and if the ruling party says that they will also support the opposition party to impeach him. We haven't heard anything yet, and so it seems like, as of now, it will go ahead at 7 p.m. on Saturday. Now, it's really hard to tell. I did ask around the lawmakers to see what the sense was inside the National Assembly now, and if they thought some of the ruling party members would give them the votes. And there were some who said that they think there is confusion even within the ruling party now. And in fact, I did talk to one ruling party, an ex-member of the ruling party, who was saying that many of the lawmakers, the ruling party lawmakers, were confused. They really didn't know what to do at the moment. They just felt that impeachment was not the way forward at the the moment, and they're just hoping that President Yoon Suk-yeol will come forward and perhaps resign or offer an explanation as to why he imposed martial law here in South Korea. But there are some lawmakers from the ruling party who have said that they would vote to impeach him until unless he gives that explanation. And so they have given him that deadline. So far, we haven't heard anything from President Yoon. And so really difficult to say what will happen tomorrow. But if the impeachment bill does not go through, the opposition parties have said that they will go on putting that out for motion again and again until all the lawmakers, including those ruling party members, vote to impeach him, because there's no other choice for President Yoon Suk-yeol at the moment.
Right, many thanks for that report. CNA's Lim Yun-suk there live from Seoul. Now, opposition lawmakers in South Korea had been on edge after rumors that there may be another attempt at imposing martial law. Acting Defense Minister Cho Byung-hyuk has reassured that such claims are not true and that both the ministry and military will not obey any order regarding another martial law declaration. Now, investigations by the police and the prosecution are underway over charges related to President Yoon. Police say its team will be looking into 4 complaints, including treason, mutiny, and abuse of power. Prosecutors have also teamed up with the military to form another special investigation headquarters overseeing similar complaints. The Defense Ministry says 3 commanders involved in the martial law operation have been suspended, while military prosecutors have filed requests to ban 10 military officers from leaving the country.
윤석열 대통령의 이번 비상계엄 폭거는 헌법과 내란죄를 위반했다는 혐의에서 자유로울 수 없습니다. 헌법을 위반하고 법률을 위반한 국헌문란 내란죄는 사형 내지 무기까지 그 죄값이 무겁습니다.
Anger still running high among the public, with prosecutors gathering outside of the National Assembly for the 4th consecutive day, demanding the arrest of President Yoon. South Korean police expecting tens of thousands of people at rallies organized tomorrow. And for more insights into the martial law fallout, we now speak with Gordon Kang. Now, he's a senior analyst at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, Nanyang Technological University, and he joins us from Singapore. Well, welcome to East Asia tonight, Gordon. I want to talk about Yoon's last-ditch effort because he had a private meeting with the People Power Party leader, Han Dong-hoon, this afternoon. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are in terms of implications that might have on the impeachment proceedings tomorrow, and could this closed-door meeting even benefit Yoon?
Thank you, Otelli. Well, I think it is difficult to say. The situation has been, I think, quite bizarre since Tuesday. There have been many fluid moving parts, and I think many people, I think it's entirely speculative to say how things will likely turn out tomorrow. But I think the key here is the development this morning where Han Dong-hoon, the leader of the PPP, stated instead that he had received intelligence that President Yoon had allegedly ordered the arrest of key politicians, including himself, during the martial law. And so I think his statement that calling for Yoon's immediate suspension, citing significant risks of extreme actions like reattempting to impose martial law if he remains in office, I think that is a key development that would lean towards a successful, lean towards the possibility of a successful impeachment motion.
How likely do you think that the
Sorry.
How likely, in a nutshell, do you think the opposition will secure that? Because they need 8, right, ruling party votes to pass the motion.
Yes, well, I think it's still early to say. So far, there's only been 1 or 2 PPP lawmakers who have expressed support for the impeachment. Importantly, there are real kind of there is an underlying hostility and anger within certain factions of the PPP on to kind of like where kind of understanding President Yoon's motivations for or reasons which he stated behind imposing martial law. Of course, there is not to say that it justifies the martial law. Many PPP lawmakers have stated that it is illegitimate and that President Yoon should apologize. But there is still hostility behind the fact that there are very real difficulties behind getting certain laws passed and getting government to function as they see as they want it to be as smooth as possible.
Yeah. So, Gordon,
and so I think,
from what we hear, from what Yoon Suk was telling us earlier, right? The PPP, they're still gathered in National Assembly. They're still trying to hash things out. Can you tell us what are the factors you think the party members are considering when deciding whether or not to break ranks and support the opposition's impeachment motion?
Yes, I think primarily these PPP members. I think it's a very sensitive time because if there's further internal repercussions, internal obstacles, challenges in the party, it would only, further prolong, the kind of challenges which they are already seeing in getting government to function smoothly. So I think it's really balancing their kind of party allegiances with broader national interests and trying to see, what's the most optimal route which they can utilize to take out of this. And I think all of them are not lost in the fact that the gravity of President Yoon's actions must be recognized, considering the legal and moral precedents that it holds. It also has significant geopolitical implications, military and economic cooperation with key allies. All rest on democratic governance being a cornerstone of their relationships. And so I think this is something which the PPP, will likely stay in the National Assembly to keep talking about for the rest of the night. Yep.
I also want to touch on one of the latest surveys saying that 7 in 10 Koreans, they support the impeachment of President Yoon. And we can see tonight, there were tens of thousands likely, of people expected. We saw the rallies today. They expected the rallies tomorrow, just to make the case in point. So how much weight do you think public opinion and all these protests carry with the ruling party as well as President Yoon at this juncture?
Yes, I think it will have significant effect on demonstrating, the weight to which the people want, better politics in South Korea. Public mobilization has been a key aspect of domestic politics. We recall last year with the Taiwan tragedy, there was also a lot of public outpouring from that. And I think that severely affected President Yoon's administration as well, and led to and was one of the reasons behind the dissatisfaction that people have toward his administration. So I think these public sentiments will have a huge role to play. Yeah.
So, Gordon, in terms of this crisis fallout, how long do you think it can drag on, and the potential long-term consequences for the ruling party?
I think if we look back at the two past cases for impeachment, it could drag on from anywhere between months and years. For Roh Moo-hyun in 2004, it took several months, and with Park Geun-hye as well, in the same way. So I think in a month, I think we have to settle for the long term in this regard. It won't be a quick. It is likely not to be a quick decision because I think as well, because of the fact that even if it passes parliamentary approval, the case needs to be reviewed by the Constitutional Court as well. And where at least 6 of the 9 justices must concur to remove the president from office. And this court is mandated to reach the decision within 180 days. So 6 months is institutionalized already. And then there's also issues of whether or not perhaps more judges may need to be approved before such a decision can be reached. And this, will have an impact on the decision. And so even things like internal politics within the PPP will decide, will swing whether or not the decision, how the decision will be made. Yeah.
So possibly a long drawn process, 6 months or so. Well, thank you so very much for spending your Friday evening with us. Gordon Kang from the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at Nanyang Technological University. Right, we're going to go for a short break now, but coming up next on East Asia tonight, Japan looking to fall back on an existing trade deal with the U.S. when it negotiates on the proposed higher Trump tariffs. Plus, China taking measures to shore up its competitiveness in global manufacturing and e-commerce. Hello again. It's time to get your business update from Roland Lim. And Roland's all about South Korea again. Financial markets undergoing quite a lot of pressure from the ongoing political unrest, but economies and now even the country's central bank governor is saying that the impact actually could be limited.
That's right. In an interview with the Financial Times, the Bank of Korea governor weighed in on the threats facing the economy. And he says the economy is more at risk from protectionist trade policies of incoming U.S. President Donald Trump than the ongoing political crisis at home. Now, Bank of Korea Governor Ri Chang-yong said that the economic impact of the political crisis in Seoul will be, quote, limited when compared with the potential consequences for Korean exporters due to intensifying Chinese competition and the hefty tariffs Trump is expected to impose. Now, Mr. Ri also acknowledged that the political crisis would delay, quote, critical structural reforms to the South Korean economy and financial markets. But he cited Trump's tariff threats as one of the main reasons for the central bank to downgrade growth forecasts for this year and next. Even before the week's political drama, Asia's fourth biggest economy was wrestling with weak domestic demand and high household debt, in addition to increased competition from Chinese exporters. Last week, the central bank cut interest rates unexpectedly, with the governor citing concerns over Trump's win. The central bank governor stressing the impact of Yoon's martial law gambit on the country's financial markets has been, quote, short-lived and relatively muted. Still, the benchmark Kospi index declined for a third consecutive session and the Korean won weakened. It plunged more than 1% against the US dollar before recovering trade 0.4% lower. Both the Kospi and the won are the worst performers in the region. Despite the current volatility in South Korea, Paul Gambles from MBMG Group explains why he's still bullish on the East Asian market.
This is Korean politics as we know it. I mean, it is sort of part of the normal cycle. You know, how many other Korean presidents, either when they've been in office or after they've left office, there've been scandals that have come up about them. Sadly, I think this is the level that we sort of expect from Korean politics, and the market and the country and the economy, thankfully, tend to be somewhat divorced from that, somewhat separate from that. So I don't think the markets will continue. They reacted, obviously, they did take a hit, but bearing in mind we had martial law and all the other shenanigans that were going on, it wasn't the greatest hit, and therefore we'd expect the won to just put the blip behind it and carry on as if nothing happened.
Japan is looking to leverage a trade deal it struck with the U.S. during Donald Trump's first term when it picks up trade talks in Washington. Now, the deal, signed in 2019, gave American farmers greater access to Japanese markets, with Tokyo able to dodge extra tariffs on its auto exports to the U.S. Japanese Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya says that the U.S. has included automobiles and automobile parts in the list of items for which further negotiations will be held, adding that Tokyo will resume negotiations on the assumption that tariffs will be eliminated. Now, his comments come as Japan, like many other nations, draw up plans to deal with Trump's protectionist measures. The president-elect has pledged to impose additional 10 to 20% tariffs on all goods from its biggest trading partners. Remember, the U.S. was Japan's biggest export destination in 2023, with cars and auto parts making up a third of those shipments. Mr. Iwaya also stressing the need for Japan to monitor the new administration's approach to trade policy, especially at a time when Washington is undergoing a period of transition. China is embarking on measures to reduce the red tape in shipping small packages overseas to boost cross-border e-commerce trade. Now, it's a move that analysts say will help boost the sector and create more jobs. General Administration of Customs has adopted measures to streamlining custom clearance for such goods, in accordance with policies introduced last week. Relevant enterprises would no longer be required to file plans with customs for their overseas warehouses. Now, it's a practice of storing goods abroad to enable efficient delivery of goods to customers overseas. Instead, a select group of custom authorities will pilot a so-called pre-inspection before shipment procedure that'll allow firms to consolidate export shipments with more flexibility. Authorities will also trial overseas parcel return centers in 20 cities. Now, these measures are expected to take effect from the 15th of December. Many Chinese youths have been turning to cross-border e-commerce amid difficulties in finding work at home and abroad. Now, in October, China exported some $8.3 billion worth of cross-border e-commerce products, and that's a 34% year-on-year increase. In the first 10 months of 2024, the value of China's cross-border commerce exports was roughly $70 billion, and that's an on-year increase of nearly 40%. Now, these types of small packaged goods make up some 2.4% of the country's total exports in US dollar terms. That's a significant rise from just 0.008% back in 2020. Analysts also add that US President-elect Donald Trump's return to the White House may have acted as a catalyst for Beijing to enhance the efficiency of Chinese role as a global manufacturing and e-commerce hub. Chinese stocks jumped to their highest in 3 weeks as traders placed bets on further stimulus to be released next week at a key policy meeting. The blue chip CSI 300 index rose more than 2%, led by gains in financial and technology shares. The Hang Seng index also advancing as much as 2.1% before closing out the day 1.6% higher. That's its best weekly gain in 2 months. In Hong Kong, mainland insurance and property counters were snapped up on expectations of a reduction in the reserve requirement ratio by the PBOC. China Life Insurance, Ping An Insurance led the gainers among financial counters. And property developers like Longfor Group also advancing on expectations of more policy support. That is the latest in business. Oteli.
Thanks so very much, Roland. Well, we're going to go for another short break, but coming up in East Asia tonight, we circle back to our top story. South Koreans protesting in the streets as the ruling party leader calls for President Yoon Suk-yeol's ouster, saying the country risks, quote, great danger if it remains in power. And opposition party spokesperson An Gui-rong, who was seen in the viral video grappling with troops on the night of the martial law imposition, explains her actions. Hello there, you are watching East Asia Tonight. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's political future appears increasingly uncertain. After a short-lived imposition of martial law on Tuesday, his own party's leader says nothing he has heard so far could change his stance that Mr. Yoon should be stripped of presidential powers. Lawmakers will vote on a motion to impeach the president tomorrow. Meantime, South Korea's defense ministry says it has suspended 3 senior commanders involved in the martial law operation, with military prosecutors eyeing a travel ban for 10 officers. And South Korean police say they are expecting tens of thousands of people to attend rallies against President Yoon Suk-yeol tomorrow. Organizers predicting as many as 200,000 people will be on the streets. A video of a South Korean woman grabbing a soldier's rifle during the chaos on Tuesday night has gone viral. Well, the dramatic clip showed An Gui-rong grappling with troops who were sent to stop lawmakers from entering the National Assembly.
Ms. An has become a symbol of the public's rejection of President Yoon Suk-yeol's attempt to impose military rule. The spokesperson for the opposition Democratic Party was among those to block troops entering the main hall of the National Assembly.
일단 총을 먼저 잡진 않았고요. 계엄군을 막는 과정에서 몸싸움이 있었습니다. 제 팔을 잡기도 했던 것 같고 이렇게 제 몸에 뭐가 부딪혔고요. 그래서 일단 다 막아내는 과정에서 이렇게 했지 일단 총을 의식하고 잡지는 않았습니다. 일단 막아야 된다라는 그 생각이 강했기 때문에 다 뿌리치고 다 밀고 그렇게 했던 것 같습니다.
Mr. Yoon's declaration of martial law this week sought to consolidate power, ban political activity, and censor the media. But he was forced to abandon it after 190 lawmakers defied a contingent of soldiers and voted unanimously to reject it. In protest, people also formed human chains around the parliament and sprayed soldiers with fire extinguishers.
저보다 더 용감하게 계엄군에 맞서 싸우신 분들이 많습니다. 국회에 들어오지 못한 군과 경찰이 막아서 국회에 들어오지 못한 시민들은 밖에서 장갑차를 막아내기도 했잖아요. 그러니까 저는 제 행동이 특별하다고 생각하지 않고 그래서 영상이 크게 화제가 될 줄은 몰랐는데. 네.
The martial law troops commander says he had no intention to wield firearms against the public. And the country's vice defense minister says no live ammunition was provided to the troops.
The U.S., Japan and the Philippines have conducted maritime exercises in the South China Sea amid rising tensions between Manila and Beijing. The drills were carried out within Manila's exclusive economic zone. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command says the exercises aim to strengthen the interoperability of defense tactics, techniques, and procedures. It comes 2 days after the latest maritime run-in between the Philippines and China and the disputed Scarborough Shoal. The joint drills also coincide with the passage of a U.S. destroyer near the disputed Spratly Islands. The U.S. Navy says the vessel has exercised navigational rights and freedoms in the South China Sea in accordance with international law. China has asked the U.S. to stop meddling with Taiwan and is warning the island not to seek independence with America's help. Beijing was responding to Taiwan President William Lai, who said he was confident of stronger relations with the U.S. under President-elect Donald Trump. The Chinese Foreign Ministry today said that Taiwan's independence movement will hit a wall and that using Taiwan to contain China is doomed to fail. A war of words has broken out between China and Taiwan since President William Lai started a tour of 3 Pacific Island nations this week. He also stopped in U.S. territories, Hawaii and Guam. On his last stop in Palau today, Mr. Lai told reporters he was confident of working with the next U.S. administration. He also called on China not to take unilateral actions that could cause unease and regret. He was responding to reports of retaliatory Chinese military drills that could happen next week.
举起拳头不如张开双手。再多的军演、军舰、飞机给予周边国家的胁迫，都无法赢得任何一个国家的尊敬。
China has objected to Paraguay's expulsion of one of its envoys over what the South American country says is interference in its domestic affairs on its ties with Taiwan. The Chinese Foreign Ministry stressed that the accusations and demands made against the Chinese delegation, of which the diplomat was traveling as a part of, were unreasonable and unfounded, and that it seriously violate international practices. The ministry added that there was no, quote, so-called interference in Paraguay's internal affairs, as it reiterated that Taiwan is an inalienable part of China under the One China principle. Paraguay earlier revoked the visa of senior diplomat Xu Wei and ordered him to leave the country within 24 hours. Mr. Xi skipped an annual UNESCO meeting and instead appeared in Congress, where he urged the country to sever ties with Taiwan.
En cuanto el principio de una sola China es un principio político, no se puede negociar. O sea, en este caso no es una opción de y con China y Taiwán. No, es o con China o con Taiwán. En el caso mío es recomendar al gobierno de Paraguay de tomar una decisión correcta lo más temprano posible.
Paraguay is the only nation in South America, as well as one of the dozen remaining countries worldwide that recognizes Taiwan. In recent years, 4 countries in Latin America, Honduras, Panama, the Dominican Republic, and El Salvador ended their ties with Taiwan in favor of Beijing. A Hong Kong judge has dismissed the first legal challenge to the city's newly enacted security law. A protester jailed under a separate national security law imposed by Beijing in 2020 had sought a one-third sentence remission, which is typically granted for inmates showing good behavior. But the latest legislation passed earlier this year prevents any sort of remission for those who had committed national security crimes. And as a result, his early release request was rejected. An exception, however, can be made if Hong Kong's prison chief is satisfied that an early release would not hurt the city's national security interests. Donald Trump has put forward former Senator David Perdue to be ambassador to China. Now, before launching his political career, Perdue held a string of top executive positions, including at Sara Lee, Reebok, and Dollar General. And it was previously reported by the New York Times that he was deeply involved at that time in the shifting of the manufacturing jobs in the U.S. to factories in China and other parts of Asia. During his time in the Senate, Perdue advocated that the U.S. needed to build a more robust naval force to cope with threats, including from China. He lost his Senate seat to Democrat John Ossoff 4 years ago and ran unsuccessfully in a 2022 primary against Georgia Governor Brian Kemp. Coming up on East Asia tonight, we dive into some of this year's top Chinese buzzwords and why they are seen as a window into Chinese society. With more than 1 billion internet users, online buzzwords in China have become a window into its society. And that's why an annual buzzword list always gets plenty of attention. So what are the top 10 buzzwords this year? And what societal trends and changes do they reflect? Well, before we take a deep dive into this, CNA's Olivia Seong takes us through this year's crop.
松弛感, which means relaxed vibes, and 班味, which can be translated as the smell of the workplace. These are just some of China's top 10 buzzwords of 2024, selected by Shanghai-based linguistic journal Yaowen Jiaozi. It's been an annual ritual for the publisher since the first buzzword list was released in 2008. That year, the term shanzhai, which means pirated or fakes, topped the list. It was a year when knockoffs flooded China, from mobile phones to celebrities, and even the hugely popular New Year's Gala program. The list resonated so well with the public, it creates a buzz every year when it's released. According to its publisher, the phrases are picked through a 5-step process, which includes an expert review before being finalized. This year, state media hailed the list for reflecting the current social and cultural trends. Making it to the list this year also are buzzwords 数字化, which means digital intelligence, 智能向善, be smart and do good, 银发力量, or elderly power, and 未来产业, or future industry. They are trends and industries that the Chinese government has been keen to promote. Though on Chinese microblogging site Weibo, some netizens have cast doubt on the phrase's actual popularity, while others said the list has covered terms that run through their 2024, even as they lamented the omission of some of their favorite phrases.
All right, so for more of these catchy phrases, we are joined now by CNA's Olivia Seong in Beijing and Tan Yuguan in Shanghai. Now, Yuguan and Olivia, I'm curious to know, are you familiar with these buzzwords and how often do you hear them actually being used? Olivia first.
Well, I can tell you, you see them online when you're scrolling through social media, offline too. If you're watching variety shows or in conversations, they do come up. And whether it's from internet slang based off events or certain trends, commentators say that they reflect the pulse of society. And I headed out to talk to some Beijingers to ask them how familiar they were with the list. Have a look.
Buzzwords of 2024.
对
City 不 City 啊？
你 City 吗？
还好吧。
硬控用的比较多嘛，你开会领导硬控你22个小时、3个小时。
我上班族都会碰到这样的东西，就是，就说上了很多年，你有没有班味儿，或者是松弛感什么的，都会天天在茶余饭后都会聊到。
出来的时候可能会有一些懵，
懵的时候你会怎么去做？
去查，赶紧去学习啊！因为现在这个东西就是你跟别人聊天的时候，别人突然报一个词，不管是年轻人，其实现在就是我觉得互联网它拉近了一个就是不管是年轻人还是老，他们都会很快的学习一些东西。
Well, Yuguan, quite a few buzzwords, in fact, thrown out there. And I have to admit that sometimes in conversation, I do have to pause and tell people, like, can you explain to me what exactly that means? What about for you?
Certainly. Actually, City City is probably the only one that I'm really familiar with. It's actually a mix of English and Mandarin. Of course, 不 being the Mandarin word for no. Together, it actually encapsulates an entire sentence, right? It's a bit like Singlish, everything is shortened. So in this case, it actually means, well, it has a rather urban vibe, doesn't it? Yeah, so the creator of the phrase is actually Paul Mike Ashton, and he's actually an American blogger living in Shanghai. He grew up in rural Pennsylvania. He says he loves how Shanghai exudes modernity, excitement, and also full of possibilities. He says the city kind of describes that energy and the vibe of being in the city. Indeed, one of the earliest appearances of City actually appeared in a series of videos that Paul rolled out when his sister was visiting, and he was showing his sister around in Shanghai.
妹妹，骑马 City 不 City？ 对，骑马也可以很 City 吗？今年来上海啊，城市怎么样呢？好 City 啊 ，Super City 啊，好 City 啊啊！妹妹，哦，在大自然里喝茶 City 不 City 啊？不 City 啊？对，在大自然喝茶不 City 啊？
So that hashtag City has been widely copied. In fact, videos with that hashtag, it was said, it's been viewed over 2.8 billion times. Imagine that. And in fact, it's even been mentioned at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs briefing.
最近一些在中国的外国博主啊，发明了一些网络热词，像是 City 不 City 啊，
今年来上海 Super City 啊，好 City 啊啊！
我也刚刚了解到这个词的新用法，很高兴看到外国朋友们在中国享受美景美食，亲身感受生动真实的中国。中国就在这里，欢迎大家来。抖音。
Olivia, you spoke to the man behind City Pu City. What does he have to say about all this fuss?
Yuguan, Paul said that the reaction from, Chinese people here has just been beyond his expectations. It wasn't something that he had planned. He also, it's not just the foreign ministry, but celebrities as well, even the likes of Hollywood stars like Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman making a mention of it when they went to Shanghai to promote their film. And so I did ask him when I spoke to him what he thought was the reason why this phrase resonated so much with people here. Have a listen.
We're coming off of the edge of a period of time in which China was sort of closed off, and we were, China was kind of focused on COVID and everything else. And I think that there's this push to kind of, re-engage. And so I think the level of kind of like language cross-switching there resonated with that in some ways, and kind of just the idea of like being back kind of on the global stage for the average person. But sometimes I'm also like, I have no idea. I mean, that lands up in some ways, and then there's other times where I'm like, but does it really make that much sense?
I think we also should point out that Paul's video became so viral because it caught the wave of China wanting to woo more foreign tourists back to China post-pandemic. And we have seen it roll out visa-free programs and arrangements with more countries. And some reports suggest that foreign tourist numbers are now reaching quite close to pre-pandemic levels as well. Paul also was telling me that he came to China 7 years ago to study Chinese, and he hoped to be a bridge between China and the US. He said that's something he hopes to continue to be able to do, especially given difficult relations between these two superpowers.
Well, it's really nice to see both of you covering such fun stories for a change. Yuguan, but beyond just all fun and games here, some of the phrases actually reflect societal trends, don't they? If you could explain that to us.
Indeed, none more so than 银法力量, which essentially refers to, if you translate it literally, it means silver hair power. It refers to how you should not underestimate the power of the seniors, be it as volunteers or as a sector of the economy. Now, if you recall in June, when I first landed in Shanghai, really, I covered this expo, this senior expo, and its exhibition catered specifically to seniors, and on display were gadgets to help them with daily life, gadgets like a chair which helps them get up, or a bed which helps them ease snoring. As well, there was also an exoskeleton which helps those with weak limbs get around with more confidence. All these innovations really goes to show you just how important the seniors market is to all these businesses in China. It is, of course, no secret that China is aging rather rapidly. Already now, 1 in 5 people in China is over the age of 60 or Telly.
Right, and Olivia, I imagine the selection process, how they decide to narrow down these buzzwords, it must be quite a stringent process?
Yeah, the editor-in-chief of the journal that publishes this list said that one of the criteria is that the buzzwords must have linguistic sociological value, essentially also saying that these buzzwords are a mirror of society. So if we were to zoom into some of these words that are on the list, particularly banwer, which refers to the smell of the workplace, those haggard faces or tired eyes, or when it comes to 松弛感, a sense of relaxation, even in the face of pressure, all these relate to the workplace. And in previous years, we had seen buzzwords like 996 or 996, referring to people who worked 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week, also make the list. And we know that these are commonly used words because also, especially now, we know that China is facing economic challenges with slowing growth, as well as concerns about unemployment. Here's what Mo Beiting has had to say.
反映人的心态吧，就是还是心态。你看硬控，说硬控，基本上我觉得这个不能算是个中性词吧。你比方说，你要是看个什么明星啊，追个星的，你说你硬控，你可能是个褒义词。那你像上班时候用硬控，基本上都是很反感。
反映了现在的一个状态吧，就是我觉得疫情之后，大家其实无论经济情况如何，我们还是松了一口气的。所以说，今年我们可能更多的会关注于本人，关注于生活。
与生活结缘的那些词语，都是从生活中蹦出来的，源于生活，但就是调侃一些，就是应该我觉得有一点讽刺的意思，确实是有一点点。
But with the release of this list, there have also been some netizens who have pointed out that there are some buzzwords or popular phrases they feel did not make the top 10. One example being 牛马, which translates to cow and horse literally, which can refer to someone who is working hard, but also refer to someone who is being exploited and being made to work like an animal. Somewhat self-deprecating, but also could be seen as a criticism of the current system. Some netizens also saying that are these lists, mostly parroting what we are seeing in the official narratives that authorities would like to push moving forward. Ateli, I also wonder, outside of China, have any of these buzzwords caught your eye?
I'll tell you what words that really, the buzzword that really caught my eye was banwer, because there you were talking about, tired eyes and this worn out appearance from work. And that basically summarizes the look of the entire East Asian team, because this week we've been following and chasing down stories because of the South Korean martial law fallout. So that's how we look. So we've been talking about all these fun buzzwords and all of that. But Yuguan, I'm curious to know are there any that refer to the economic policies?
Quite a few, actually, Othelli. In fact, 3 of them refers to really official policy. One, of course, is especially economic policy. One, of course, is 未来产业, which essentially means future industries if you literally translate it. Now, it refers to those emerging industries that are quite strategic and important to China right now. We're talking about sectors like space, health, energy, and high-tech manufacturing. And these are critical to China in boosting its economy. And of course, it brings us to 数字化, which is a pun on the word 数字化. So they replace the middle word 字 with 智, which essentially means artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is, of course, very important to China right now as far as boosting innovation and productivity. Telly?
Right, that's all the time we've got. Thank you so very much, CNA's Olivia Seong in Beijing and Tan Yu Guan in Shanghai. And that note, it is time to wrap up East Asia Tonight this Friday. CNA's coverage of the South Korean political crisis continues on Asia Tonight at 8 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time. And don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. Thanks for watching.